Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Friday, February the 2nd, 2024. I was looking at the comments on my YouTube channel, and someone commented on the US chart. They suggested to me that I should actually be looking at a chart for set somewhere in like 1783. I think this was a chart for when Britain ratified United States independence or something like that. So it was up to Britain when she ratified America's independence, and so America should hold on for Britain to make the decision. Of course, it doesn't really work like that, does it? America declared its independence on July the 4th, 1776, possibly at 5:10 p.m. Now, that chart for July the 4th, 1776, is the one that most astrologers go for. Certainly not a chart relating to 1783. And one of the reasons is that July the 4th, 1776 is a very important date for Americans. I think most Americans regard July the 4th, 1776 as the beginning, and very quickly from July the 4th onwards, the colonists were at war with Britain. They were controlling territory. It wasn't long before the rebels had an ambassador in Paris. I think they didn't call him an ambassador in those days. I think they called him a minister. So by 1783, effectively, the United States had been a country for some time. And so it seemed to me to just not be realistic to have a chart for a country set for 1783. Of course, the commenters did say that it was a Vedic astrologer who had been using this chart, and how this chart had got amazing results, or had got very good results, at least as used by this Vedic astrologer. But this underlines the point that we have to think about what charts we actually use when doing horoscopes of countries. I think it is really important, if possible, to have a chart that really resonates with the country in the way that July the 4th, 1776 resonates with the United States, or I don't know, Bastille Day, July the 14th, 1789 resonates with France. That was a storming of the Bastille. Okay, you could take the chart of the Second Republic, the Third Republic, Fifth Republic, whatever. But really the storming of the Bastille was really the beginning of the French Revolution. And in France, their big day is July the 14th, and it is Bastille Day. Today I want to look at the charts of Slovakia. Slovakia, a small country in Central Europe, perhaps not a country that many of us know a great deal about. I have spent some time in Slovakia, and I did have some thoughts about its charts, and I use charts in the plural. If you consider Slovakia, you would think, well, it's split split off from Czechoslovakia, or indeed on January the 1st, 1993, the Czech Republic and the Slovak Republic, they split. It was Czechoslovakia, all one, and then they had this amicable divorce. And so, yes, we have, in theory, got this date of January the 1st, 1993, at midnight. There are some problems with this chart, not least the chart of the Czech Republic and the chart of the Slovak Republic are arguably pretty much the same. Just one is set for Prague, the other is set for Bratislava. So that is an issue. And I'm thinking that we need to be looking at other charts And it kind of depends who you are. It depends what your view of Slovak history is. And that depends on which chart you regard as being most important. Hence this concept of 3 charts. And that is something I will be looking at. Now, I'm doing this as a sort of conceptual framework. I don't know a great deal about Slovak history. I don't speak Slovak. And so if you're a Slovak and you're watching this video, and you might sort of disagree with some detail I've got, when Slovakia declared its independence in March 1939. That's one possible date. You might quibble with the timing I've got, but as again, it is a conceptual framework. It's not just about Slovakia. So you might not find Slovakia particularly interesting, but it's a way of thinking about national horoscopes and how perhaps to deal with them. I'm guessing that not very many people are going to watch this video. Well, my views are going to be a bit down because people are going to see that I want to talk about the Slovak horoscopes, and they're just not going to find that interesting because they'd prefer me to talk about Meghan Markle or Donald Trump or someone like that. But no, I think this video I do want to talk about the Slovak horoscopes, and maybe I'll sacrifice some viewing figures for that. Okay. Before I do all that, I want to look at the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Friday, February the 2nd, 2024. So here is the chart. So top right, that's a sort of truncated Slovak flag. It's not the whole Slovak flag, but I just sort of cut off a bit in the middle just to show you that I want to talk about Slovakia in this video. So, this is what's going on today. The moon is now in Scorpio for everyone. Moon is at 10 degrees Scorpio. It does mean that today is going to be quite emotional. The emotional content is going to be greater than usual. People are going to have strong feelings. But they may not always be able to express these feelings. The feelings, may get trapped. But the feelings are going to be strong. As I've said, just because people are not expressing their feelings doesn't mean they haven't got feelings. And look, the moon is opposition Jupiter in Taurus. So when you've got a moon-Jupiter opposition, Jupiter kind of makes things bigger. So perhaps people's feelings are going to be really exaggerated. And I suppose with moon opposition Jupiter, there may come a moment where there's some kind of explosion. People just may not be able to keep their feelings to themselves, and they just can't help it. Those feelings start to manifest. So I think we all have to consider our emotional well-being and how we are expressing our feelings. We really don't want our feelings to be trapped. We need to find a way of expressing those feelings and getting them out into the open. It's going to be difficult, and perhaps we need to find some way of sort of burning off our excess emotion. And I don't know, I suppose it could be sort of physical exercise, perhaps. That moon-Jupiter opposition is in fixed signs. Moon in Scorpio, Jupiter in Taurus. Scorpio and Taurus are both fixed signs. So there may be a sort of a danger that, yes, something is getting larger, something is getting more intense, but it just can't really move. And so things get stuck and the pressure builds. And yes, there could be at some stage some kind of explosion. But on the plus side, the moon is making a sextile aspect to Venus. Maybe Venus is the way out. Venus, is a planet of relationships. It's about other people. It's about how we relate to other people. And maybe through relating to the right people, we can find a way out. We can find a way of expressing ourselves, in a way that is, not completely dramatic, perhaps in a way that is sort of natural and even understated, but nonetheless very real. So that's certainly something perhaps we should be doing. So if we're feeling really, there's a build-up of emotion inside us, perhaps we need to discuss it with someone. Maybe someone else feels the same way as we do. And so for many of us, I think it's not really a day for being alone, just a day for being with the right people, being with people that we trust, being with people who make us feel comfortable. And while all this is going on, Mercury, there it is, 26 Capricorn, is making a sextile to Neptune. Mercury sextile Neptune can be quite intuitive. Mercury is, the communication planet. It's a planet of thought. Neptune is about sensitivity. It can be connected with sort of psychic abilities, and we may be able to pick something up, in an almost supernatural way, and just sort of understanding what's going on. And when we are talking to people, this Mercury sextile Neptune may allow us to really start to, understand what the other person is thinking and feeling. I mean, after all, a sextile is a fortunate aspect. So, Mercury and Neptune, they come together nicely. And it's also good for anything to do with psychic abilities, the supernatural, and spirituality in general. So if you want to tune into your spirituality, now might be a great time to do that. As far as midpoints are concerned, Jupiter is aspecting the Mercury-Uranus midpoint. So Mercury-Uranus as a pair is about excited communication. It might be about good news. So maybe we're going to hear something, which gives us cause to celebrate, or there may be a sense of sort of relief. We were thinking things were sort of bad, but we get some news. We start to get the first evidence that maybe things are improving. Having said that, like yesterday, Mars is making a semi-square to Saturn. Semi-square is quite an important aspect. It's quite a hard aspect, quite a tough aspect. And Mars and Saturn as a pair can be about frustration and delay. And so if we're not careful, we could feel frustrated like yesterday. We may just feel we just can't get things out into the open. We just may feel that our progress is being blocked. And, this could make us quite angry and annoyed. But so we have to be careful about how we vent that anger and that annoyance. And that kind of takes us back to Moon in Scorpio, opposition Jupiter. So with Moon in Scorpio and Mars semi-square Saturn, there could be frustrations, and emotions could get blocked, and they could sort of build up, and if we're not careful, we could lose control. So we do need some discipline, and as I also suggested, we need to find the right outlets. And I think there are people around us who can provide an outlet for some of our anger. I mean that in a positive sense. Finding people who are going to listen to what's on our mind, and that might kind of diffuse the situation. And by the same token, we have got to be able to listen to other people. If someone is annoyed, angry, finds they can't express themselves, and maybe we can help them. Maybe we can, listen to what they've got to say and be sympathetic and perhaps calm them down. So that's the broad picture today. And now I'm going to look at the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for Friday, February the 2nd, 2024. Aries, you are starting to take things quite seriously, Aries. You understand that things can't be trivialized, that there are serious issues at stake. And so if you try to trivialize what's at stake, then things could backfire in a major way. But I don't think you are going to trivialize. Every encounter you will take seriously, and if possible, you will listen to your feelings. Your feelings can give you a lot of very useful information. But you do need to have some patience. As an Aries, you tend to be rather impulsive, but you need to sort of step back and let the atmosphere sort of wash over you so that you can get an idea about what's actually going on. That does require patience. That means sort of being quiet. Just tune into things. And I think that's something you can do. And I think that, your sensitivity, may actually surprise you. And at the same time, Aries, it's possibly a day when you can benefit from digging in deeply into things. So don't just focus on surface appearances. Don't feel that you have to keep moving. It might be a time to just stay in one place and really investigate what's going on. Dig deep. Find out the facts. Find out the facts behind the facts. And in that way, you can piece together, some really very valuable information. Now, this information could be working on an emotional level, understanding what makes people tick, or it could be financial. If there are financial details that you feel that you really need to sort out, then today might be a great time to be doing it. Now, I'm not suggesting, though, that today you have to be a hermit. I think that in your own way, you can be quite assertive, and in a social sense, you will know how to make an impact, and you can make some good contacts today. I think that your verbal skills are actually quite good. You just have to verbalize in the right way. It's not about sort of the usual Aries, say the first thing on your mind. No, that's not about that. But I don't think you're going to do that. I think you're going to be more subtle than that, and you're going to be listening to your feelings, picking up what's going on in the atmosphere, on the ether, however you want to conceptualize it, and then you will know what to say. And I think today you can cultivate some important contacts. Now, as far as close relationships are concerned, you may find that the people close to you are feeling tense. They feel a bit trapped. I suppose you feel a bit trapped as well at times, but the other person is going to feel trapped, tense, not quite sure what to do with themselves. And so you have to work out how you want to deal with that. Do you mind having people around you who are feeling tense? Can you deal with them? Can you actually diffuse the tension? I think you probably can if you make the effort. Not least because I think you'll understand what's going on. I think if something's bothering your partner or someone else who's close to you. If something's bothering them, I think you'll be able to pick up on it very quickly. And I think you'll also be able to respond in an appropriate way. So, overall Aries, I think you're going to be very sensitive today, and I think you can actually use this sensitivity for finding things out, for understanding the world around you, and I think also for understanding certain people in your immediate environment and understanding how best to work with them. And if they've got a problem, I think you've got what it takes to unlock it, but that will require some patience. But I think that's okay. So so that's today. It doesn't look too bad, provided you handle things correctly. Taurus. It's a day, Taurus, when you do have to consider the world outside your immediate sphere. You're not alone, and things going on out there can have an impact on you. You just have to accept that. That's the way it is. So, before doing things off your own bat, do consider the world in which you're working and some of the characters around you. You really do have to. You do have to take them into account, and you may find that your particular way of viewing the world doesn't always chime with the other person, whoever that other person might be. In some respects, you might be just too optimistic, too full of yourself, and that kind of approach may not go down too well. So before being optimistic, before making grand gestures, consider what impact those grand gestures might have. And so if you can just tone things down a bit, or at least pause to understand how your actions might impact other people, I think you'd be doing yourself a favour. Now, on a positive note, the moon, moving through Scorpio, your opposite sign, is making a sextile to Venus. Of course, Venus is your ruling planet. And that moon sextile Venus is, I think, very fortunate. It allows you to make contact with other people. It allows you to interact with them. And it may be that we're talking about someone who can, in a way, elevate your vision of the world. You do sometimes need variety, and I think you're going to find someone who can actually give you variety. So, if you've come across someone who seems a bit unusual, perhaps who comes from a very different background from you yourself, don't just run away, because you can learn a great deal from this person. If you just give them a chance. I mean, that is important. You've got to give them the chance to, I suppose, work their magic. Now, as far as career and business is concerned, for some time now, well, nearly a fortnight now, the sun has been moving through Aquarius. And, in the Taurian chart, Aquarius does have a special association with business, career, and the sun right now is starting to have a structure which is quite optimistic. I mean, it's aspecting the Jupiter-Uranus midpoint. Sun on a Jupiter-Uranus midpoint can be like, a great sense of relief. Suddenly everything's okay. And so if in terms of career and business, things have been stuck for a bit of time, it's possible that things just haven't been moving. But if you actually look around you and you see what's going on and you see where things are moving, you might suddenly have a sort of revelation that there is action, that what you perhaps thought was going nowhere is actually going somewhere. And it's a situation that I think that you can almost certainly benefit from. So overall, I think that looks very fortunate, and you just have to work out how to deal with these kind of opportunities. These might be just sudden opportunities that come from nowhere, and how to deal with these opportunities, but also to deal with other people. Certain people might try to kill the buzz, if you like. They might not share your excitement, and I think that might be a general problem for today. You are easily excited. I think there is an optimistic streak working through Taurus at the moment, but certain people just might not share that enthusiasm, and they might even try to dampen it down. So you have to work out how best to deal with the situation. Is it about distancing yourself from people who don't share your optimism, or is it about listening to them? Maybe they've got something useful to say. You don't have to accept everything they say, but maybe there are a couple of things that you do need to take on board. Gemini, you are perhaps not typically Gemini. I say this because Mercury is your ruling planet, is sextile Neptune. And, Geminis have a certain reputation for being insensitive. I mean, I don't know whether that's really true, but it's still a reputational thing. And this sextile between Mercury and Neptune is going to make you quite sensitive. You're going to be able to pick up on things that perhaps other people miss. And so, open your heart, feel what's going on around you. Because I think you could pick up, some really quite useful information, especially if you're working in terms of career, business today. There are things going on in terms of you and employers, colleagues, that kind of thing, but a lot of people are going to miss. But really, for you, it's quite obvious where things are moving. And so, with your sensitivity, you can, you can start to understand what's going on. And I think that also will allow you to properly position yourself. So you can sort of put yourself in a position where you can benefit from something that is about to happen. Or on a more negative note, you can sort of dodge something. You can perhaps see a problem coming up, but you can make sure that you're nowhere to be seen when the problem actually occurs. Now, this Mercury-Neptune sextile, may also make you actually quite telepathic, just picking up on people's thoughts and feelings. Not something you normally do in most cases, but today I think you can. So that's perhaps something to work on. Perhaps you can, get into that sixth sense, and don't be skeptical about it. It does exist, the sixth sense, and yes, you have a sixth sense. And today, that sixth sense is particularly strong if you want to use it. I mean, it's an option for you. So don't be dismissive, and also don't be don't be too negative. And if you are feeling negative, then consider other people. How are they feeling? I think that some of the people around you actually have quite a positive view of the world. They can see possibilities. You, on the other hand, you may be asking too many questions. So if someone is being really full of themselves and optimistic, and they can see chances for successful action left, right, and centre, don't dismiss what they're saying. Listen to them, take it on board. Maybe you're being given a pointer to the future here, and with that Mercury sextile Neptune making you so sensitive, you should be able to understand that. I think you'll know the difference between someone who is making it up as they go along, and someone who has genuine insight. And finally, I should say that you should not underestimate your power. Today, Geminis are in a pretty powerful position if they want to be, in the sense that you can focus enormous amounts of energy at one thing. And that's something that Geminis normally can't do, because Geminis can be so scattered. They're trying to do 2 or 3 things at once. But today, particularly with Mercury's in Capricorn, Mercury's in sensible, focused Capricorn, that Mercury can just focus all of its energy into one thing that's really important to you, with incredible intensity, and you can actually get an amazing result. It will be intense, a lot of effort, a lot of concentration, but I think it could be worth it in the end. Though, do consider other people. When you are getting these kind of results, other people might be a bit overwhelmed, a bit confused. So you've got to consider the social dimension, but still, I think today you can really make something happen, and you will have the willpower and the concentration, to make it happen. It's not a typical Gemini thing, but today that's you. So make the most of it. Find the opportunity, but also try to be compassionate. That's important. Cancer. Well, Cancer, you certainly have a clear sense of what you want to be doing, how you want to be changing the world, and how you want to be perhaps creating a new world. Very, very clear sense of what you want to do, and a clear sense of your own creativity. But you do need perhaps a little bit of flexibility. I think there's a danger that you focus, all your energy on one thing. You decide this is the area that you're going to put all your energy into, and you don't consider other people, and you may find that it's just all too much, and you may not actually notice what impact you're having on the world around you, which is kind of unusual, because Cancerians are pretty sensitive. Cancer is a pretty sensitive sign. You usually know what's going on, but today you might be just so focused on one set of feelings and one set of goals that you kind of miss the big picture, and you create a situation which may not be particularly fortunate. So don't push things too far, Cancer. That is really important. Also, you do have to consider other people, especially today when the moon is in Scorpio and it is sextile Venus. That is a fortunate aspect. Venus is often a planet connected with with relationships, and it does seem that through your own enthusiasm and creativity, you can attract someone's attention. They're going to find you interesting. They're going to want to know you better. And, this may be your chance to strengthen a relationship, or perhaps even to develop a brand new relationship, if you're into that kind of thing, if that's something you require. But it's just that, on an emotional level, just don't take things too far, because, with Moon, your ruler, opposition Jupiter, there is a danger of taking things too far. Don't let emotions reach a point where they just become so intense that really nothing can happen. They just become just too much for everyone, including you yourself. So that's the broad picture today. I think overall, you do have a fair amount of power. You do have a lot of focus, and that's always good to have focus. Right now, you know what you enjoy, and because you know what you enjoy, you can give it everything you've got. And I suppose there's a moment of just being in the present, not having to worry about the past and the future. But just don't overdo it. There's just some danger that that might happen. Leo, you are probably feeling better today. I think that yesterday you were feeling maybe a little under the weather and just not really in the mood for anything. And today, I think you can start to see opportunities, and I think that also you're starting to recognize that actually in your life you do have a lot of freedom, and what you thought was a problem may actually be an opportunity. You can with this you feel just a sense of excitement, even if on the surface nothing much is happening. Even if you're just doing nothing, you're in your own space, you still feel that something's happening, that things are changing in your favor. When you look at sort of the various aspects of your life, there may actually be a certain sense of relief. You may discover today that something that you thought was a problem is actually not a problem at all. It was something, for some reason, you were worrying about it in the past, but now when you look at it again, you can say, hold on, what were you worrying about? And so Leo, that does give you, a certain sense of calmness. And from an aesthetic perspective, there are things you can do to, beautify your immediate environment. It's a good day actually for thinking about sort of decorations and order in the home, making sure not just that things are in the right place, but things are placed in such a way that you have some kind of domestic harmony. That's something that you can work on. It's you work on it in a step-by-step way. And then in a way, that's kind of what you want to do. You don't want to do complicated stuff. You don't want to have to act too quickly. If you can slowly but surely, one step at a time, change your environment. I don't say transform your environment, just changing things one step at a time. You're going to feel, you're going to feel really good about it, and that's certainly something you can do. And so you mustn't feel that there's anything though that you have to do. I don't think it's a day, for example, to be sort of having to be out there in the world. Yes, I know there's pressure. You are an ambitious person, and you may feel that there's this obligation to do something amazing at work. There's an opportunity, that you have to be seen, that you have to look as if you're busy. I don't know. I don't think so. I think that, trying too hard to impress people, especially in terms of business, work, career, I don't think that's a good idea. I think you'll just exhaust yourself. I think so. Instead, just do what feels right, and I think that that will make you feel comfortable. Virgo. Virgo, you are quite sensitive today. And that's because Mercury is sextile Neptune. I was talking about this when I was talking about Gemini. Mercury rules Gemini. It also rules Virgo. And so with Mercury sextile Neptune, you do get a feel for other people, and in particular, people who are close to you. You just know what they're thinking. You know what they're feeling. If they're unhappy about something, you'll know about it. You don't have to be told, and this knowledge, gives you an advantage, at many levels. It means that, for example, that you can act to, forestall a problem. So if there's a problem coming up, maybe in a few days' time, you'll know about it, and you'll be able to make adjustments. And maybe the problem will never occur because you've because you've caught it at a very early stage. On the other hand, from the perspective of relationships, your sensitivity is really useful, I would have said. You'll know which people you can trust. You will know which people you can get close to. You just feel it. It's just listen to your feelings, and it will all become very clear. And I think, Virgo, you're going to be able to communicate in a way that is really very sensitive. You'll understand how far to take things, and it's like almost as you're speaking, you're picking things up, and you can change what you say, sort of in mid-conversation as you get the emotional feedback. You can change what you say, and I think that's really useful. So I think today, Virgo, you can get on, extremely well with other people, but not in a dramatic way. Today, in many respects, is pretty downbeat. There are no planets in fire signs, unless you count Chiron and the North Node. So there is a certain lack of a spark, but I think that probably works in your favor. That's the last thing you want, is mega excitement, people going crazy. That's not what you want. You're able to sort of take things slowly, and because you understand other people, you understand their basic equilibrium. I think you're not really going to put a foot wrong. So overall, I think it's a day when you can really put yourself in a situation where you're well balanced in your social environment. So yeah, make the most of it. Libra, you're feeling, I'm afraid, a little tense. You just feel that you can't really express yourself, and you want something to happen, but you don't know how to make it happen. And so, yeah, there's a certain sense of nervousness for many Librans. I mean, not all Librans, but I think it's something you do have to consider. And it may be that you're thinking about your various responsibilities. there are responsibilities and there are things to worry about. For example, money. Money is always a problem, isn't it? Not just for you, for everyone. Money is always there, or the lack of money is always there, and that might be making you feel a bit nervous. But it actually seems that there are ways to put your mind to rest today. Venus is your ruling planet, and there is a fortunate sextile between the moon and Venus. And so moon in your horoscope is it's placed in Scorpio, and for Librans this can have a sort of big impact on money, at least in terms of your understanding of money. And so with moon sextile Venus, you can see opportunities for improving your financial situation, and through your own efforts. I'm certainly not talking about gold bars descending from the sky or anything like that. It's about your own efforts, because moon sextile Venus, sextiles are about fortunate effort. It's always effort in sextile. Trine's less about effort. Sextiles do have a bit of effort in there, and so through your own efforts, you can actually make real strides towards giving you an enhanced feeling of financial security. Now, one thing that might spoil the day is a semi-square aspect between Mars and Saturn. So in the Libran horoscope, Mars represents the other person. After all, Libra is your star sign, Aries is the opposite sign, and of course the ruler of Aries is Mars. So Mars is square Saturn. And so, actually, as I was saying yesterday, Mars square Saturn can represent people who are quite harsh, perhaps people who are frustrated, people who are annoyed about something, and these people could, in certain circumstances, upset your own sense of balance. So, look at the people that you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, and just consider the possibility that some of them are just annoyed about something, perhaps even just being obnoxious, and they could just make your life a misery. So consider who those people might be. And then perhaps you need to take evasive action, stay out of their way. For the moment, I'm not saying you have to always stay out of their way, just for the next couple of days. You don't want that kind of aggravation. And because of this Mars semi-square Saturn, you should be a little careful in terms of close relationships. Said Mars is your relationship ruler. If it's square Saturn, semi-square Saturn, it may be that people who should know better are in some way trying to restrict your freedom of action, or they're just giving you grief for no reason at all. So if that is the situation, then you need to step back a bit or stay out of this person's way, because the last thing you want to do is have to deal with someone else's frustration. But don't worry, Libra. I think this is a situation you do understand, and I do think you know what to do to avoid the problem. Scorpio. The moon is now solidly in your star sign, and I think this is good news. The moon may be fallen in Scorpio. That's because it's exalted in Taurus, therefore it's fallen in Scorpio. But it's your star sign. Scorpio for you is a special sign. It's where you feel at home. So with moon in Scorpio, you feel comfortable. Yes, there is a sort of a high level of emotional content. For some, it might be too much, but you're a Scorpio, you kind of understand feelings. And so I think there are a few things that are going to surprise you today. You know how things are going to work out, and you have a good sense of the emotional environment. But when dealing with other people, you may have to be a bit careful, or perhaps a bit tolerant. Reason being because today there is an opposition between the Moon and Jupiter. So it's an opposition across the main axis of your solar chart. In other words, you've got Moon in Scorpio, opposition Jupiter in Taurus. It may be that another person is kind of treading on your boundaries. They're wanting something from you. They're not being fully respectful. I'm not saying that they wish you harm or causing you damage or anything like that. It's just some people just don't quite know how to behave, and that might upset you. You might get angry, but maybe you should be a little more tolerant. Some people just, are just a bit naive. They perhaps don't understand the depths of Scorpio feelings, and they perhaps also don't understand that Scorpios don't suffer fools gladly. So they might make their presence felt in a very clumsy way, and you have to work out how best to respond. I just think you don't necessarily have to be angry about it. I think you can just be polite. Just create a bit of distance. You can politely explain yourself. There's certainly no need to go over the top there. I should also say that Mars, which is your ruler, so Mars rules Scorpio. It continues to be semi-square Saturn. So today, I think there could be some genuine frustrations, like yesterday. It just may be that things just aren't moving as fast as you'd like them to move. And it may be that there's a little bit of disappointment. You get involved in something that you thought was going to be enjoyable. You thought it was going to be fun. And it turns out to be a bit of a chore. So if you're thinking about leisure pursuits, it is Friday. I suppose Friday evening is a traditional time to do something special, do something fun. Perhaps you should think again. Maybe something you've been looking forward to all week just turns out to be a damp squib, turns out to just be not what you thought it was going to be. So if you have doubts about something you're going to be doing, some leisure activity that you're really looking forward to, but if you have doubts about it, then consider the possibility that it's best to just skip it. Do you really need to do it? Probably not. So don't have expectations about enjoyment, because with that Mars square, semi-square Saturn, there is some danger that you're let down. Now, in terms of relationships, close relationships, I think communication is actually quite important, because it does seem that some of the people around you, in your immediate circle, particularly sort of partners, people you're really close to, they could just be under pressure at the moment. They just don't really know how to respond. And that's something you've got to be aware of, and you have to decide how best to handle the situation. I think it's going to be okay, though, because the moon, which, as I said, is moving through your star sign, is sextiling Venus. So, Venus in the Scorpio chart represents the other person. So that moon sextile Venus does allow you to interact with someone, and to interact on an emotional level, and perhaps it can create a sense of understanding. That other person may actually feel that you understand them, and because of that moon sextile Venus, after perhaps a few difficulties, a few false starts, I think relationships can be stabilized, and they can be be enhanced. So I don't think there's any need to spend a whole day alone. I think from an interpersonal perspective, there are certainly opportunities. Sagittarius. Sagittarius, you might be inclined to spend the day on your own, like yesterday. I mean, after all, the moon is in Scorpio, and the moon being in Scorpio means that Scorpio is the sign just before Sagittarius. So the moon is not in Sagittarius yet. It will be very soon, but right now, that moon in Scorpio does encourage you to shun social contact. And even if you are involved with other people, you're not really going to give them the whole you. There's something you're going to want to keep back, and actually, that might be a good thing. You don't want to give you don't want to give people the whole you in all your glory. That could be overwhelming, and for you, it could be undermining. But you may feel challenged nonetheless, because the moon is opposition Jupiter, and Jupiter is your ruling planet, and I think I think that many Sagittarians are going to want their own space. They'll indeed appreciate their own space. They want a space, a place where they are in control. But forces from the outside may want to kind of intrude on that space. I mean, I don't mean that in a dangerous way. Just people are always intruding on each other's in terms of each other's space. That moon opposition Jupiter does indicate that. So I think your approach to that is going to be you're going to take at first you're going to be kind of annoyed, but at the same time, your sense of humor is going to be maintained, and also your ability to see the world from an alternative view. I think that you can very quickly shift from being really into yourself, just thinking that you're important, thinking that your own space is important, not really wanting to engage with other people, to being suddenly a little bit of optimism creeps in, and then a lot of optimism creeps in, and then you start actually saying something, because there are things to be said today. And actually, Sagittarius, you can really get people's attention with the things you say. The things you say will actually be very spontaneous, and they will be optimistic, and they will be even funny. So if you want a small audience, I think you can get that audience. So I think that's certainly cause for optimism, and it is a suggestion there that you don't want to be all day on your own, because you've definitely got something to offer. Yet I should point out that that other people can be quite powerful. Don't underestimate people. If you spend any time with one particular person, you'll start to realize how powerful they are. You'll start to realize how charismatic and influential they can be, and even how manipulative they can be. Perhaps because they understand your emotions. Maybe they understand your weaknesses, and you may get into a situation where you do feel that suddenly you're pressurized out of nowhere. Now, that's not in a way that is sort of horrific or really, or devastating or anything like that. You're just going to suddenly feel the pressure. Now, this other person might be someone trying to sell you something or trying to persuade you of something. It might be difficult to deal with this. You might feel that if you're not careful, you might end up doing something or buying something you don't want to. You don't want to do. You don't want to buy. So consider that point of vulnerability, and that's going to be a particular point of vulnerability. When you're dealing with people on a one-to-one basis. So telephone sales and all that kind of stuff, you have to watch out. And indeed, anyone who you meet today who seems charismatic and influential could potentially be dangerous in the sense of encouraging you to do something that you really don't want to do. Capricorn, I think you're looking. Yeah, I think things are looking okay today. From a social perspective, you have a good understanding of people, and I think most importantly, other people have a good understanding of you. Reason being that the moon is in Scorpio, and it is sextile Venus in Capricorn. Venus is moving through your star sign. So with moon sextile Venus, people will understand you. And so there's no need to explain yourself too much. It's quite obvious what your likes and dislikes are. I don't think you need to worry too much about misunderstandings. It's probably just enough to just be with someone, be with a group of people, and everything will be pretty self-explanatory. So that's that's possibly the main theme today. And I think at the same time, Capricorn, you're going to have a feeling about what you want. Maybe almost like a desire. You're going to start to feel that things are becoming clear, and you know what you want in life, at least in a sort of short-term basis. I don't know. It's now 2nd of February. What do you want to happen? I don't know, by the end of the month. You have a feeling for that, and at the same time, you have a feeling for what you don't want, and you may sort of suddenly realize that people you've been around for a long time. You're suddenly looking at their priorities, and you may be thinking, that priority doesn't fit with my priority, and that could create something of a clash or a misunderstanding. What do you do when you and someone else, perhaps even sharing the same space, but you have different priorities? How do you cope? I think you have to show a certain amount of understanding. And while I've said that you and other people in general are going to understand each other pretty well, there is a problem if there's a clash of priorities. And I think if you listen to your feelings, I think you will understand that someone who has different priorities from you has actually those priorities are actually heartfelt. They're a very important set of priorities, and they're not prepared to compromise. So what do you do in that situation? You can argue all you like, but it's not going to change anything. Compromise is unsatisfactory. Do you distance yourself from this person, or do you accept them, or do you find some new solution that I haven't thought of? So you need to work on that. I think it is actually very important, not just today, but over the next few days, could be next week, 2 weeks, rest of a month maybe. So that is something you really do need to think about. Now, if you are concerned about work, business today, then I think overall the picture looks good. And I think that the moon sextile Venus is going to help. I think in terms of business partnerships, people you need to interact with at work, there's really good communication. And I think if you want to create changes at work, perhaps you want to do things differently, then I think you and other people are going to be very good at negotiating them. And if you're looking for a new job, then I think that your ability to express yourself and show your conviction and commitment is going to be really excellent. So maybe it's a time to think about new work if that's what you want, and perhaps making inquiries, but don't necessarily overdo it. Maybe it's just about making inquiries, getting a feel for what is possible. Because your emotional communications are very good, and I do think you can use that facility at communication in your working environment. Aquarius, you have a pretty good idea, Aquarius, about what you want. And I think that you're quite passionate about it. Passionate. I mean, I know that the word passionate isn't often used for Aquarians. Aquarians have a reputation for being detached and dispassionate. But I think you do have real passion today, Aquarius, for the things that really matter in your life. And, particularly in terms of your overall direction, I think you're going to feel quite certain about, where you should be going. And I don't think you need to tell everyone about it. You can tell one or two people about it, but you don't have to tell the whole world. Still, I think discussing your ambitions and your sort of view of the future with at least one other person could actually be quite useful. I mean, after all, the moon is moving through Scorpio, and it's making a sextile to Venus, and the moon, Scorpio in the Aquarian horoscope, is a very high-profile sign. So you can meet people, you can talk about your priorities, talk about what you want, and I think that you'll get some excellent feedback. This feedback won't be completely uncritical, but I think that you can talk through some of your plans for the future, and I think that could be really useful. But this doesn't take away from your passion. Both the Saturn-ruled signs, Capricorn and Aquarius, do have a real passion today, and and as I said, you're not your normal self. You're not your dispassionate self. There are things that you are passionate about, And so, that's good, because if you're half-hearted, how can you really hope to make any progress? So I think you can have a really quite a constructive Friday. You do have to consider, though, how you are going to deal with your family and your home. Your family and your home kind of represent a sort of alternative pressure. There's an alternative way of using your time. I think it's important that you're out there making progress, but you do have to think about the foundations of your life. The real grounding. Family, your home, what you're standing on. So you do have to take that into account, but you can't allow your family to distract you. Family members may want your attention, but you can't give them too much attention, because you've got other things to do, and that's for sure. Finishing up with relationships, and I think you need to you do need to listen to people. You need to let people express themselves. I think there are some people close to you who are actually feeling quite excitable. They really take the view that things can happen. They want things to happen, but maybe they just feel they haven't really got a chance to sort of put that sense of excitement into action, and they're kind of keeping it to themselves. Well, Aquarius, maybe it's your job to unlock that. There are people close to you. They want something to happen. They're looking for action, so encourage people, to be themselves. Encourage people to be open about their vision, and I think you know who these people are. You can kind of sense that nervous excitement, and so once you've unlocked people's true vision, some amazing things can happen. So do consider your social environment, and do consider some of the interesting opportunities that do exist there. Pisces, it's a day when you are thinking beyond yourself. I think if you just look at your own everyday existence, it may feel a little tedious. You may feel that you're being restricted, that you can't really express yourself how you'd like to. So, Pisces, it's up to you to make the changes, and I think that is something you can definitely do, and I think you're going to find support. I mean, after all, the moon is moving through Scorpio, and you're a Pisces. Scorpio is a water sign, and not only that, the moon is making a sextile aspect to Venus. Venus is a planet very much connected with other people. In the Pisces chart, it can be about friends, and so there are people out there who can really help you move on. They can help you see a different view of the world. You've got to give them a chance, but they're there. So find out who those people are, and then see where it goes. And I think you're going to be helped by the fact that Jupiter's your ruling planet. Jupiter is actually aspecting the Mercury-Uranus midpoint. So, Mercury-Uranus as a pair is about excited, optimistic communication. And so think about what you say. The things you say can be exciting and compelling, and you can present, a wonderful vision of the world, and and this excitement that you're able to express, could be almost contagious. So when you start to talk about your excitement, other people will start to talk about their excitement, and that can be the beginning of something really amazing. So yeah, don't hold back. That is important. Though, if possible, be a bit careful when dealing with people on a one-to-one basis, simply because there are certain people around who can be very manipulative, and they can be very keen to control things. Now, maybe that's not a problem. Maybe that's fine with you, but I think that's probably not, in most cases, not too desirable to have people that really want to be in control all the time. So make sure you don't allow any one person to completely control the agenda, because that would kind of be defeating the whole object of the day, because the whole object of the day is to find excitement, to find new things, new horizons. And if one person is trying to limit horizons and is trying to focus on what they want to focus on and is trying to control the agenda, well, that spoils things, doesn't it? So once you know who that person is, you need to put them in their place, or stay out of their way. So those are my forecasts for the 12 signs, and what I want to do now is look at the I Ching. So as always, I ask the question, what is Friday going to be like for those watching the I Ching segment of this video? So let's see what's going on. The first hexagram I got was hexagram 33, retreat. I think for many of us, we may feel that we're in a situation that we don't really want to be in anymore. We're tired of it, we're bored of it, and it's not really going anywhere. And we may actually feel that if we stay in this place for too long, that we may be making ourselves vulnerable. And so it may be time to back off. Now, it is the fourth line is moving here. And this really refers to a retreat that is voluntary. It's not something we have to do. And it's not a difficult retreat. It's not like a retreat where we're retreating from something that we're really committed to. And so that retreat would be painful, wouldn't it? If we're really committed to something, but we have to back off, that's not nice. But no, it's a situation where we feel that retreating is the right thing to do. And the I Ching is saying that superior people will benefit from this retreat, and it says that the inferior people will not benefit from a retreat. And I think what it's saying there is that we may be with people who don't want to retreat from a situation. They want to stay there, and they want us to stay there as well. So when we retreat and we leave them there, they're not so happy about it. Because I suppose the I Ching kind of assumes that we're the superior person. Of course, no, none of us can say that we're superior, but in sort of I Ching speak, we're the superior person. We move out, and the inferior people are left behind, so they're not too happy about it. But I'm not making any comments about hierarchies and ranks here. Really, it's just I Ching language. So there is another way of looking at it, and that is about how we deal with the things holding us back. Because I think many of us have felt that something has been holding us back. And although this hexagram is about retreat, there may be an opportunity to break free from something. Now, is it a good thing that we're breaking free? It's a good thing to break free if we've got the strength to see it through. If we haven't got the strength to see it through, then it's a bad thing to break free. So if you do feel a sense that you're breaking free, then consider how strong your position is. If you're in a strong position, it is really good that you can break free. If you're in a weak position, then breaking free might actually put you in danger. So you do have to consider the position. Anyway, retreat, this hexagram retreat does move, and it moves to hexagram number 53, which is development. And so this is about developing things gradually. And it has particularly relates to relationships. It's not just about relationships, but things have to develop at a slow pace. And they will develop at a slow pace. That's the way to do it. We shouldn't be in a hurry. But the point is, we are making solid progress. And that's what the day becomes. So in a sense, we retreat. We perhaps marshal our resources, and then we can start moving forward again. But in a very slow, sort of deliberative kind of way, never hurrying, until we finally make the connections and make the progress we need to do. And I think this particularly applies to relationships. So if there are people we're trying to get close to, you just do it slowly. We maybe have backed off, but now we kind of know what's going on, and we can start making progress again towards our goals, whether our goals are people, ideas, perhaps their material goals, whatever they might be. That's kind of a good start to the weekend. Slowly moving forward towards whatever we want to move forward to, and so I think that as we move from Friday to Saturday, I think things are looking good, and perhaps we can start to speed up. But I mean, who knows? This hexagram, this I Ching only relates to today. Okay. That's the I Ching, and I now want to turn back to the astrology and the horoscope of Slovakia. Now, I must emphasize that I'm talking about Slovakia because it's an example. I mean, if you're not interested in Slovakia, it still has relevance. It's just about how we deal with these national charts. So the standard national chart for Slovakia is this one here. January the 1st, 1993, at midnight, simple. That is when the Slovak Republic became an independent country. That's when Czechoslovakia split. You had the Czech Republic. Is it called Czechia now? I get confused. And yet then you had the Slovak Republic. You can see Slovak Republic has got 9 Libra rising, Jupiter rising, Sun in Capricorn. The Sun is always at 10 Capricorn on January the 1st. A really quite a boring time for a country to come into being. And here's a chart for the Czech Republic. Of course, there are other charts of the Czech Republic. going way back, 14th century. And I'm sure there are charts for the Slovak Republic that go back, way back. And if you're Slovak or into Slovak history, you might comment and say, no, you've got to think about this chart in the 12th century or whatever. But, I'm trying to keep it simple, and I'm not claiming to be an expert on Slovak history. But you can see that the chart for the Czech Republic is pretty much the same as the chart for Slovakia. The only difference is that one is set for Prague, which is the capital of the Czech Republic, and the other is set for Bratislava, which is the capital of Slovakia. Now, why would I look at other charts? Well, when I was living in Slovakia, this was a long time ago, I don't know, 2003 through to 2012 I was there. I was started getting into sort of Slovak history. And it seemed to me that there were kind of two groups of people in Slovakia. They had different ideas about what the important moments were in Slovak history. And Slovakia does have a rather difficult period of history relating to the Nazi occupation of Czechoslovakia. I mean, of course, Slovakia was part of Czechoslovakia, or so there was, there were fascists in Slovakia, and in particular there was this priest called Joseph Tiso who got on quite well with Hitler. You can there are pictures of him flying off to. He flew off to Berlin. He met Hitler. There's pictures of him, I think, in Vienna. And so Joseph Tiso was a super conservative priest, sort of anti-communist, and basically Slovakia became a kind of a puppet republic under the Nazis from 1939 onwards, and essentially, Tiso, he went to Berlin. I think he was given an ultimatum. Either you declare your independence as a separate country, or you'll be split up and we'll give more of your stuff to Hungary or whatever. So Tiso went back to Bratislava and he declared independence. And so we have a chart there. This is the chart for Slovakia declaring its independence. Now, as a puppet regime, as a puppet republic. So, if you're an anti-fascist, this is not the kind of chart you want to think about with your country. Yet, I think, when I was in Slovakia, there were a lot of people in Slovakia who regarded this as the beginning of their country. When it became hardly an independent country, but a puppet regime. And I think independence was declared just after midday on March the 14th, 1939 in Bratislava. So we have a chart. Now, who is going to be attracted to that chart? Logically, it would be sort of right-wing nationalists. Now, I don't know about the politics of Slovakia now, but I think when I was in Slovakia, there were right-wing nationalists, people who adored Tiso. They had, they felt that Tiso had been treated unfairly, because what happened with Tiso was he was, after the Nazis fell, he was arrested and he was hanged for treason. And so he was seen as a bit of a martyr by right-wing nationalists in Slovakia. So this is a possible chart, and there is an ideological element, so it depends on what you think, what you believe. Now there's an alternative chart, which I'm not sure if anyone has really used this as a possible chart for Slovakia. But when I went to Slovakia, I regard myself as a bit of a Second World War buff. I mean, not in a heavy way, but I regard myself as someone who knows a lot about the Second World War. I was one of those teenagers who liked to read, biographies of Hitler and battles and that kind of thing in the past. So I thought I knew a lot about the Second World War. In fact, when I was at university, I did a course in Eastern European politics, which was mainly East European history. It was at a sort of fairly renowned institution with the teacher was well regarded. But the thing is, when I was doing this course, I was one thing I was never told about, which maybe I missed the lecture, but I had never heard of something called the Slovak National Uprising. So what the Slovak National Uprising was a rebellion in 1944 against the fascist regime in Slovakia and against the Nazis, and it was a major thing. It was about the same time as the Warsaw Uprising, and I had never heard of it. And actually, in Slovakia, it's a very important event, the Slovak National Uprising. There are squares, monuments after the Slovak National Uprising, and it was a moment where, in a way, Slovakia was establishing its kind of autonomy, and it's against the Nazis, and perhaps and arguably the Slovak National Uprising wasn't just an uprising against the Nazis, but from a psychological point of view, was a moment where you could see Slovak nationhood. Now that might be controversial, but given how important many people in Slovakia regarded the Slovak National Uprising, particularly people on the left, it was an alternative starting event for Slovakia compared to Tiso declaring independence as a fascist puppet state. And there was a conflict there. People who were sort of right-wing nationalists were obviously not sympathetic towards the Slovak National Uprising. They had no interest in it. I can remember trying to talk to them about it, and just the lack of interest was was quite amazing. Finding some obscure facts about the Slovak National Uprising, I didn't want to talk about it. And I think perhaps one of the reasons why the Slovak National Uprising is just not just wasn't perhaps discussed in the history books, at least the history books I was reading, is maybe that had something to do with the Czechs. I mean, Czechoslovakia went under Czechoslovakia. I mean, maybe the Czechs under the Nazis were. They were very well behaved by and large. They were, they did what they were told by the Nazis. It was so bad that the Czech government had to send 2 assassins to kill Heydrich, which they did. But by and large, they were pretty pliant until right at the end, and so maybe they didn't want to. Give much attention to what the Slovaks had done with the Slovak National Uprising. It was a real uprising. They got support from all the Allied sides. There were Americans supporting it, the British, and the Soviets. I mean, it failed because the Soviets the Soviets got bogged down. The idea, I think, was the Soviets were going to break through into Slovakia and help the uprising. And kick the fascists out. I mean, by the way, some of those fascists were, I believe, the SS Galicia regiment, were involved in putting down the Slovak national uprising. Of course, the SS Galicia regiment are mainly populated by Ukrainian Nazis. Just thought I'd throw that in. But it has a chart, the Slovak national uprising. I believe this is the moment when it began. Again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was at 8 p.m., I believe, on August 29th, 1944, in the town of Banská Bystrica in Slovakia. So here we have a chart for the Slovak national uprising. And you could say that this is an alternative chart for Slovakia. A chart. Who is going to be attracted to that chart? Well, I think people on the left. People on the left are going to regard this as a potential beginning for an independent Slovakia. It was a violent demand for autonomy, and not just autonomy, freedom from Nazism. What better chart for independence? Now, you could say that's not really an independence chart, but I think because the Slovak national uprising has become iconic for one group of people in Slovakia, it has become arguably a possible chart for Slovakia. So this is why I think we've got three potential charts. And now, one thing about the, if you look at the Slovakia 1939 chart, you will see that the moon is at 10:16 Capricorn. It's also got a sun in Pisces, opposition Neptune. I mean, that kind of perhaps suggests the whole sort of delusion of an independent Slovakia as a puppet state of the Nazis. The sun on the midheaven. If I've got the timing right, I mean, I got this time. I was looking at a blog connected to a Slovak newspaper, and I had to did a Google Translate, and I think it was something. I don't know why I went for 12:07 precisely, but it was. But I have got the link somewhere. Assuming that was right, you've got sun. Yeah, you've got Sun opposition Neptune on the mid MCIC axis on the MCIC axis. So that perhaps represents. That represents some of the delusion to the event. This wasn't real independence. And yes, the moon was at 10:16 Capricorn. So going to the chart of the Slovak national uprising, assuming it really did happen on August the 29th, 1944 at 8 p.m. The moon is at 10:07 Capricorn. In other words, the Slovak national uprising happened exactly on the lunar return of Slovakia's of the TISO independence chart for 1939. So they both had the moon in Capricorn, and I think that's important. We notice how the moon is opposition Saturn. It was a heroic gesture, completely heroic. But I mean, it did fail in the end. The Nazis put it down quite brutally because the Russians weren't. I think they got held up at something, the Dukla Pass or something, and there were no Soviets to help out, and so the Slovak national uprising failed. And I think the fact that you've got the moon opposition Saturn does indicate the failure. You've got Mars at 0 degrees Libra in its detriment, conjunct Neptune. So, it just didn't really happen, and I think that perhaps the astrology kind of suggests that. And so remember, the March the 14th chart of the independent Slovakia, March 14th, 1939 chart, the sort of fascist Slovakia, the ones that the Slovakia that the nationalist right might be attracted to. That's their beginning. And the chart of the Slovak National Uprising on August the 29th, 1944, which those on the left in Slovakia might be attracted to. They both have 10 degrees Capricorn. And then we move to, we go back and have a look at the chart for Slovakia, January the 1st, 1993. And we see that the sun is at 10 degrees Capricorn. So this 10 degrees Capricorn comes up. Although in Slovakia, in the Slovak chart, this January the 1st, 1993 chart, it's the sun at 10 degrees Capricorn, not the moon. So which chart do we use? Which chart works best? What I did was I considered three events. Three possible events, big events in Slovakia's history. One would be Slovakia joining the European Union. That was a big event, March the 1st, 2004. Now, it wasn't a unique event. Other countries joined the European Union at the same time. So that's one possibility. Another big event, a rather tragic event, was a plane crash on January the 19th, 2006, in which I think 43 Slovak soldiers and servicemen were killed. They were peacekeepers in Kosovo, and they were flying back to an airport in eastern Slovakia in Košice, and just before the airport, the landing went wrong and it crashed, and everyone but bar one was killed. So I think for a small country, losing 43 servicemen would be a big event. And the third event was in 2018 there was the murder of a journalist called Jan Kuciak, and he was murdered by sort of the mafia, and it was, I'm not quite sure who that was. There was a Sicilian or the Italian mafia were involved in it. I mean, but it was a major scandal in Slovakia, and as a result, the government fell. And so, it was apparently the first time that a journalist had been murdered in Slovakia, and so it was a huge event. And so, I was just thinking about those three events and just see, how do these events link with the three charts? Let's start off with Slovakia joining the EU. So this is a chart for Slovakia joining the European Union. It is an important event. And I think that's, I was in Slovakia at the time, and the Slovaks were really excited about it. I think it was considered to be something good, something positive, that Slovakia had finally come of age as a country. Although, of course, when you it's kind of a bit of a contradiction there, because when you join the EU, you kind of lose some of your sovereignty. But that's the way it goes. But, it was positive. You had a very close Jupiter-Saturn sextile there with Slovakia joining the EU. When Jupiter and Saturn are, they're about the business cycle. Often when you've got them in sextile, I know they're in sextile right now in 2024, but but then it was a new beginning, and I think the Jupiter Saturn sextile. It was an exciting time. That's how it was felt. So what about the three charts? So if we compare Slovakia EU with, say, okay, let's start by considering Tiso's Slovakia, the chart of the 1939 chart, when Slovakia got its independence nominally, but as a sort of client state of Nazi Germany. How well does it fit? I think there is some evidence that this chart is working. Note how at the time that Slovakia joined the EU, there was South Node was opposition the Sun in the sky, and how this hit the nodal axis. You can see the South Node was conjunct the North Node, and the North Node was conjunct the South Node. So I think that's always quite important when the North Node and the South Nodes link. So I think you had something going on. But aside from that, I think, we've got, there is the Mars of the 1939 Slovakia chart at 26.8 Sagittarius, and the ascendant set for Bratislava was at 27.35 Sagittarius. So the ascendant was picking up the Mars. You had at the time of Slovakia joining the EU, there was ascendant was opposition Venus, and it was hitting the 1939 Mars. So I think you'd agree that there are certain links there. So what about the Slovak national uprising? How does that relate? How does that how does that relate to Slovakia joining the EU? So inside we have the Slovak national uprising, and the ascendant at the moment, set for Bratislava, where Slovakia joined the EU, is exactly on the midheaven, and I think that is that's really good. So the midheaven of the Slovak national uprising chart is where that uprising aspired to go. Now, I'd love to be negative about that because I'm not a great fan of the European Union, but to be honest, that seems to be something quite positive, having the ascendant in 2004 when Slovakia joined the EU, being on the Slovak national uprising's midheaven. So that's good. At the same time, this happened at the Saturn return of the Slovak national uprising. So when the uprising started on August 29th, 1944, Saturn was at 8.13 Capricorn. When Slovakia joined the EU, Saturn was at 8.51 Cancer. Sorry, let me start again. When the uprising started, Saturn was at 8.13 Cancer, and just under 60 years later, Saturn was at 851 Cancer. So there was a Saturn return. So the Slovak national uprising had its Saturn return. And that, to me, indicates that we can really start to regard the chart of the Slovak national uprising, with that Saturn return, as a valid chart for Slovakia. You also notice that the seventh house of the Slovak national uprising chart is at 23 Virgo, and the moon, when Slovakia joined the EU, was at 18 Virgo. So it was not a million miles away from the solar return, and we have a Jupiter return. So Jupiter, the Slovak national uprising, Jupiter was at 723 Virgo. At the time of Slovakia joining the EU, Jupiter is at 857 Virgo, just less than 2 degrees apart. So in fact, you had so the EU, Slovakia joined the EU at the Slovak national uprising's Saturn return and Jupiter return. Again, really does reinforce the idea, this important event of Slovakia joining the EU does really suggest that, that chart, even though the uprising was unsuccessful, it is connected with Slovak nationhood. Finally, let's compare the joining of the EU with the 1993 chart, which I kind of regard as a boring chart. Slovakia joining EU. We can see that Saturn is quite close to the midheaven. I mean, that kind of makes sense. It's not exactly there, but it is there. Now, Mercury is at 27, was it 27, 29 Sagittarius, which is the midheaven. So Mercury was at 27 Sagittarius when Slovakia broke from Czech Republic, January the 1st, 1993. The midheaven of the Slovak national uprising chart was also at 27 midheaven, also at 27 Sagittarius. And of the ascendant, when Slovakia joined the EU at midnight, May the 1st, 2004, was at 2735 Sagittarius. So the ascendant was picking up the Mercury of the 1993 Slovakia chart. So I would have said something is working there. You might also, I suppose, notice that Neptune is moving towards a conjunction of a 1993 Saturn. It's not exactly there, but I suppose the symbolism kind of works there, because Saturn represents your borders, it's your integrity as a country, but Neptune is the seas. It's getting all disintegrated because Slovakia is becoming part of a wider union, and so at some level Slovakia is losing its independence, and so that's Neptune on at the time Slovakia joined the EU, being conjunct Slovakia's Saturn. So that's the EU. So I think the EU seems to me to provide support for all three charts, but I would have said strongest support on this case for the Slovak national uprising chart. So another event is a plane crash on January the 19th, 2006. I've said Košice. It wasn't in Košice. It was a bit south. It was about, 20 miles south. It's not going to make a big difference to the chart. It actually happened in Hungary. But so yeah, there's only one survivor, and I think although looking at the Wikipedia article, I think the survivor supposedly rang his wife at 7:30 p.m. to say he was still alive, but it was around 7:30. I've got 7:38. I don't know about the absolute precision on that. So let's just compare this plane crash with the three charts. Notice that Uranus is on the 7th house cusp, which is classic indicator of a disaster. So that's okay. So there's a chart. So let's firstly compare the plane crash with the 1939 chart, where Slovakia declared its independence, but as a client state of Nazi Germany. So we'll put 1939 Slovakia and a plane crash on it. So is anything picked up? Well, Pluto, at the time that Tiso declared independence, was at 2924 Cancer, and the Sun was at 2933 Capricorn at the time of the plane crash. So that kind of fits. Also, notice that Venus retrograde was exactly on the 7th house cusp. And this, you had Venus. You notice how there's Venus square Saturn. No, sorry, yeah, Venus was on a descendant and it's squaring with Saturn. So Venus is picking up on that chart. Although Venus on a descendant doesn't particularly feel to be something. Doesn't particularly feel like a plane crash. But at the time of the plane crash, there was a Moon-Pluto square, and so the Moon at the time of the plane crash, Moon was at 27 Virgo, and Pluto was at 25 Sagittarius. And so you can see that Pluto was conjunct the Mars of the Tiso independence chart, and Mars would of course represent the military. So what was going on in 1939 was kind of perhaps indicating having an impact on the Slovak military decades later in 2006, and the Moon is triggering it. So Pluto was kind of conjunct the Mars, although not exactly there, but the Moon was squaring the Mars. So that Mars-Pluto square was hitting Mars in the 1939 chart, and that indicates to me that that indicates to me that perhaps the 1939 chart, the one that I assume sort of right-wing nationalists would favour, does appear to be working to some extent. So let's look at how the plane crash would be affecting the Slovak national uprising chart. So if we put the Slovak national uprising and the plane crash, so anything going on here. Well, kind of. So the Slovak national uprising had as its midheaven 2711 Sagittarius. So the Moon was squaring the midheaven, and Pluto was quite close to the midheaven. So I think there's a possibility. The Moon was on a descendant, on the Slovak national uprising's descendant, and Pluto was conjunct the midheaven. So I think you could argue that that's kind of working. I mean, of course, I do understand if you look at enough charts, you're always going to find something. So I do absolutely understand that criticism. Yeah, but we're always going to find something if we look hard enough. But still, it's a principle that counts. The fact that we do need to sort of look at several charts. So there's something going on there. And finally, we'll look at the plane crash in terms of Slovakia's 1993 chart. Neptune is continuing to hit Saturn. This happened, of course, quite soon after Slovakia joined the EU, about 18 months later. And we still see this Neptune conjunct Saturn. See, Neptune at the time of the axe crash was at 1638. The Saturn was at 1621. Maybe you can see that Neptune conjunct Saturn in two different ways. I mean, when Slovakia joined the EU, Neptune hitting the Saturn, that is Saturn's boundaries being weakened, it becoming part of a wider body for better or for worse. In terms of a plane crash, which a much closer conjunction, so Neptune conjunct Saturn might be about the confusion in that plane. Particularly as at the time of the plane crash, Mars was square Neptune as well. So there's Mars square Neptune. So that Mars was square Saturn, Neptune was square Saturn. So in some ways, maybe hitting at Saturn would help explain the crash. So this is the 1993 chart. Remember, so I think it's a Saturn. So I'm thinking that it's quite possible that something's going on. And of course, it was terrible news. Terrible news. So the moon was at 2756 Virgo, and Mercury was at the 1993 Mercury was at 2729 Sagittarius, and Pluto was on the Mercury. So Pluto was hitting Slovakia's Mercury, the 1993 Mercury, and the moon was triggering it. And so moon and Pluto hitting Mercury, terrible news. A lot of soldiers were killed, 43, or a lot of military personnel were killed, which is a lot of people for a small country. So I'm just showing you that, all three charts, are potentially working here. Finally, there was the murder of Jan Kuciak. This was devastating because, it was obviously the first journalist. It wasn't just him who was killed; his fiancée was killed, and you've got mafia and the government. The Prime Minister is a man called Robert Fico. He at the time not too popular. He's seen to be, involved in all sorts of things, and he resigned. He announced his intention to resign on March 14th, 2018, and he resigned, I believe, on March 15th. So I'm not going to look at the chart of the murder. I'm going to look at the chart of Fico's resignation. I don't know what time he resigned, but this is. Here is again. I said it for noon. I didn't have the time to really work it through. So this is the 1939 chart. And Pluto is at 2056. So Pluto has just gone over the descendant of the 1939 chart. And I mean, I suppose the idea there of people coming from outside Slovakia's borders and killing journalists, or I don't know who, whether it was Slovaks, I don't know who precisely did it, but people involved from outside Slovakia's borders involved in the killing of journalists, that seems to really fit Pluto on a descendant of the 1939 chart. Notice also that Slovakia, Fico declared Slovakia's independence on March the 14th, 1939. Fico announced his announced his intention to resign on March the 14th, 2018. So, and he actually resigned on March the 15th, I believe. So the sun is, the two suns were pretty much in the same place. So it really resonated. This was, March the 14th was a big day in 1939, and it was a big day in 2018 because that's when Fico announced his declaration to resign. So those two events do really indicate that that 1939 chart really is working. I mean, disappointing, I suppose, if you're an anti-fascist and you do not want the beginning of a fascist government to be part of your current national astrology. But I mean, we just have to look at the astrology and accept the situation. What else is there? I think that is about it. I mean, that's the main thing. So looking at the Slovak national uprising, seeing if there's any connection there. Slovak national uprising and the resignation. The Slovak national uprising, remember, has its midheaven at 2711 Sagittarius. And don't forget, the midheaven is the leader, the president. President is the head of state, but this is the Prime Minister. It's the leader. And we see that at the time of Fico's resignation, Mars was at 2843 Sagittarius. So Mars was almost exactly on the midheaven of the Slovak national uprising, which is kind of what we would expect. The symbolism, I would have said, was pretty good there, and that I think that's the main thing. Oh yes. Saturn, when Fico resigned, was at 814 Capricorn. Saturn, the Saturn of the Slovak national uprising is at 813 Cancer. So there was Saturn opposition Saturn. So look at the Saturn cycle. On when the Slovak national uprising had its Saturn return, that was when Slovakia joined the European Union on 1st of May 2004. When you had the Saturn opposition Saturn, 14 years later, that was when Fico resigned, when the Prime Minister resigned because of the scandal relating to the murder of Jan Kuciak and his fiancée. That, to my mind, is pretty strong. And Saturn is not just opposition Saturn, but it's also hitting pretty close to Slovakia's moon. So that's that's pretty powerful. So, Slovak National Uprising chart, I'm convinced this is a chart you need to look at, as well as the 1939 chart. Finally, I want to look at the 1993 chart again and compare it with the resignation. So, 1993 chart. Okay. There we again. We don't know what time he was resigning. The 1993 chart has the moon exactly on a descendant, and you can see that Venus is conjunct the descendant at 1013. Okay, the symbolism might not be perfect, but something is being hit. But Mercury at the time of resignation was at 1305 Aries, so it was pretty much opposition. Jupiter rising in the 1993 chart. So Mercury was, Mercury is about news. It's about a sort of a clash, and I kind of think that works. So what I'm saying is that we need to look at all three charts when trying to understand Slovakia's horoscope. It's not. We shouldn't just look at one horoscope. I think I've pinpointed three horoscopes. Now, there's one final chart I want to look at, and that is the chart of Robert Fico. Now, he has been Prime Minister on and off since 2006, and he has just. You can see how he resigned almost in disgrace in 2018. Guess what? He's Prime Minister. He's Prime Minister again. So he hasn't gone away. Who is this man who manages to stay in power for so long? And here's a question: guess what sign his moon's in? We've looked at some Slovak charts. Guess what sign his moon is. His moon is in. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you got it. We had the moon in Capricorn in the chart that when Fico took power. Oh, sorry. In 1939, when Tiso took power, when Slovakia became a client state of Nazi Germany, moon was in Capricorn, and the moon was in Capricorn during the time of the Slovak National Uprising. So it is not surprising. It's not surprising at all that if we look at Robert Fico's chart, he has the moon in Capricorn. Now, this is a midday chart. I don't know what time he was born. At midday, his chart was at 9 Capricorn. His chart could have been anywhere between 3 Capricorn and, 15 Capricorn. Now, when you look at Robert Fico, his party, SMER, is on the left. And I would guess that most members of his party would identify with the Slovak National Uprising chart. They would not identify with the chart of the 1939 chart. I mean, Fico, if you've been following the news, he's fairly, I won't say sympathetic to Russia, but he certainly understands Russia. He's not a fan of sending weapons to Ukraine. I believe at the beginning of his career, in his adulthood, he was a member of the Communist Party as a Czechoslovakia communist. But I mean, a lot of people were. It doesn't really mean anything. But he is a man of the left, supposedly. And yeah, he would, I would have thought, identify with the Slovak National Uprising rather than with Tiso declaring independence in 1939. So just to very quickly compare his chart with the two events. So he was born on September the 15th. So if we compare, if we put Fico compare him with the 1939 chart. So there's Fico. He has his sun at midday, was at 2237 Virgo, and its opposition, the 1939 sun, the suns are opposition each other. Born for birthdays 6 months apart, September the 15th to March the 14th. So the Tiso's 1939 Sun, 2259 Pisces, against Fico's 22 Virgo Sun. So that kind of suggests that he is almost opposed to that chart, opposed to the idea that 1939 was the beginning of Slovakia, because I'm sure that Fico would regard himself as being an anti-fascist. So I think that makes sense. And there's Mars, the 1939 Mars, which is square Fico's sun. So not much sympathy there. Then let's compare Fico's chart with the Slovak National Uprising. Now, the Slovak National Uprising for Fico is different. I'm sure that Fico regards the Slovak National Uprising as a very important event, and perhaps he regards it even as a possible beginning of Slovakia. I don't know. So if we go to the Slovak National Uprising chart, okay, it happened in Virgo, but there is his there is Fico's Mercury is conjunct the Sun of. There was a Sun-Jupiter conjunction at the time of the Slovak National Uprising, and that Sun-Jupiter conjunction was conjunct Fico's Mercury. So probably the Slovak National Uprising sort of inspires him to some extent. That's my guess. So, okay, that's it with Slovakia. It's probably been quite tedious just having to do this lots and lots of comparisons of charts. Probably there are not many people watching me by now. But it's just something I just wanted to do. You may not have found this interesting, but I hope that perhaps you've found it useful. And my message is that you can't just look at one chart, and it may be that different people in a country may be inspired by different charts, or may connect with different charts. The 1939 chart. If you're a right-wing nationalist, you regard that as the beginning of Slovakia, even though Slovakia was becoming a client state of Nazi Germany. If you are on the left, then yeah, the Slovak National Uprising is the chart to go for. This is a fight against fascism. It's about actively confronting fascism, even though you might get destroyed in the process. Slovakia put Slovakia on the map, and I think both events are important. And also, we've got the event January the 1st, 1993. That's the boring chart. I think it works to some extent, but just my general intuition is that the 1993 chart is maybe not working quite as well as the other two charts. I don't know. Maybe I'm just biased. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say for today. Thanks a lot for listening. If you found this video useful, then I would be grateful if you liked it. If you're not subscribed and you found it useful, then of course I'd be grateful if you were to subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. Thanks again for listening, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.